Assalamu alaikum. The title of my presentation is the potential of bee pollen in the treatment of pollen allergy. Bee pollen is the pollen collected by forager honeybees, that is the bees who work outside the hive, and this pollen is collected from the anthers of flowers of flowering plants, carried in their pollen baskets. Special anatomical feature in the hind legs of honeybees. They collect this and pack it into their pollen baskets and go back to the hive or to their home, and after that they download the pollen into the hexagonal cells. And as you can see in this picture, you find that honeybees have yellow round particles, and these are the pollen collected in their pollen baskets, and they are going home. This is the entrance of their hive. And here you have a honeybee which will download her the pollen from its pollen baskets and stack it into the hexagonal cells. And this is a more general frame. Here is honey, sealed honey with wax, and here is the pollen, and we call pollen at this stage, after they are packed in the hexagonal cells, we call it bee bread. And you can find different colors of pollen depending on the flowering plants they collect it from. Here's another mosaic of beautiful pollen grains. And here we can collect the pollen. We can collect the pollen by special traps, in order to use it for several uses. Here is the pollen basket, uploaded with pollen. Okay. The importance of pollen to the bees. This is a rich protein natural food used by bees in order to feed the larvae of the workers, food for the worker bees together with honey. And without pollen, the worker bees cannot synthesize royal jelly and bee venom, because these two products are rich in proteins. Royal gel is the only food of the queen, and bee venom is essential for self-defense. The importance of honeybees to plants. As you know, without pollination of pollen plants, flowering plants will die without pollination, because they reproduce sexually. So this is the importance of pollen to the flowering plants. The importance of bee pollen to humans now. It can be used for nutrition. They call it superfood, as a functional food to treat diseases and to treat pollen allergy. The idea this presentation is suggesting. The effect of pollen on human health. It can be summarized as follows. Bee pollen can be seen as a healthy food with an extensive variety of therapeutic properties. Fia et al. Summarizes some of these therapeutic properties as antifungal, and these are scientifically proved. There is evidence on all these functions: antifungal, antimicrobial, antioxidant, anti-radiation, hepatoprotective, chemo-preventive, anti-cancer, and anti-inflammatory activities. Effect of bee pollen on human health. In addition, it has been reported to trigger beneficial effects in the prevention of prostate problems, arteriosclerosis, gastroenteritis, respiratory diseases, etc. Now we come to the allergy aspect, which is the core of this presentation, or the main objective. We find that airborne pollen causes allergy in humans, and this is a global problem because pollen producing flowering plants are everywhere, almost everywhere. Okay? In Jordan, a few studies showed that aerobiology of pollen, especially from the pollen count, there are some very few studies, Laisawi and Ababne, Hani Ababne, Dr. Hani Ababne, of course, and they have some studies about allergy of pollen, allergy to pollen. Okay, and here we have products of Jordanian beekeepers of pollen grains. The anti-allergic effect of bee pollen, there are promising results that bee pollen can also be used to prevent these allergies. They cause allergy, and we can use bee pollen to treat these allergies. It claims that a small consumption of bee pollen can desensitize against hay fever, which is airborne pollen, are known since long time, but only recently it was proven that bee pollen indeed exerts anti-allergic and anti-hay fever effects. The anti-allergic effect of bee pollen depends on was tested by bee pollen phenolic extract and the flavonoid myrcene in the murine model of ovalbumin induced allergy. The bee pollen phenolic extract treatment in doses of 200 mg per kilogram showed the inhibition of the PO edema, which is an indication of the effectiveness of the treatment. Myrcene also inhibited pulmonary cell migration, and IgE and IgG, these are the immunoglobulins. It prevented the migration of specific allergen production. Their results indicate that myrcene is one flavonoid that proved to have an anti-allergic effect and therefore constitutes a possible potential to treat allergies. Effect of bee pollen on mast cells, which causes allergy, of course. Bee pollen ingestion by rats significantly reduced the cutaneous mast cell activation elicited by specific antigens. So it also reduced the in vitro mast cell degranulation, which has a relationship with allergy. These results revealed that the anti-allergic action of bee pollen was exerted by inhibiting the activation of mast cells, which plays important roles not only in the early phase but also in the late phase of the allergic reaction. Some studies indicated that bee pollen administration before IG sensitization, IgE, which an indicator of allergy, inhibited the IgE-mediated mast cell activation in the bulb mice. Also, bee pollen significantly reduced serum IgE levels in ovalbumin immunized mice by oral administration. Oral administration of some of the flavonoids such as quercetin and luteolin are reported to have been inhibitory or to have inhibitory effects on mast cell activation. These compounds also inhibited IgE-mediated histamine release and TNF and IL-6 production from bone marrow derived mast cells. Therefore, these studies indicated that both bee pollen and the flavonoid compounds, in this case we have specific flavonoid compounds, not just the whole bee pollen. These studies, both of bee pollen and flavonoid compounds, can inhibit immediate type allergy reactions by inhibiting mast cell activation. And here we have sublingual also immunotherapy, and the methods, the experiments, the results, and the conclusion was sublingual, which is under the tongue. Sublingual immunotherapy is safe and effective in reducing symptoms and oral corticoids in patients suffering from pollen allergy. Side effects, of course, people suffering from certain types such as liver diseases, hematological disorders, are not recommended to take bee pollen. We can conclude from the past discussion, although pollen grains are known by their allergic effects, cumulative scientific evidence is supporting their use to treat pollen allergies themselves. Several studies indicated that bee pollen extract have anti-allergic and other important therapeutic properties. These medicinal effects of bee pollen are partially mediated by some types of flavonoids. The potential of bee pollen to treat pollen allergy is promising, but further research is needed from local pollen in Jordan. Thank you very much.